The Blue Jays, for our baseball fans north of the border, there's some big news, man. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Charlie Montoyo, the manager of the Blue Jays, taking over for your John Gibbons.
Shut up.
I know how much you love him, man. I always got to mention that. But Charlie Montoyo has said that it looks like Vladdy is going to play first base and DH this year in 2020 for the Blue Jays in a 60-game season, which I think – listen, Vladdy wants to be a third baseman. He wanted to be. That's the position the Blue Jays signed him to play. But I think for the sake of his career – like, baseball's such a mental game, right?
Yeah.
If you're struggling at the plate, your defense tends to fall too. Like, if you are having a very tough time, like as a center fielder tracking the ball, or as a second baseman throwing the guy out at first, like, it's such a mental game. It's like golf. Like, if one part of your game struggles, you tend to bring your whole game down. So if Vladdy's struggling at third base, which I think at times he did last season, like, it looked like he was trying too hard at times when you watched the games. And there were certain times, like, he'd miss a ground ball, he'd overthrow the first baseman, and you could tell, like, that gets to you. Like, he's human. Like, that gets to you. You really want to do well, and especially a player like Vladdy, who is supposed to be let's face it, he's supposed to be the franchise player for the Blue Jays, and I think ultimately him and Bo will be those two guys that push that team to a championship caliber team. That wears on you. So for the sake of Vladdy's career, if he can go to first base, now first base is not an easy position. Like, people want to say it's an easy position. I played first base my entire life. It's not easy, man. Guy throws one in the dirt. You got to scoop that ball to get that out. You drop that ball, there's no worse feeling than not getting that guy out at first when it's on you. Like, first base can be a mentally draining position as well. It is not easy to play for people who think it is.
Yeah.
If Vladdy can go to first base and play well and DH and get better as a hitter, because he has all the tools to be a hitter. He's just got to put that to hitting and become that elite hitter that we so desperately want, but also believe he can become. I think this move only benefits the Blue Jays long term. I think Bo is such a natural defender. It just looks like it comes easy to him. That can only benefit Bo Bichette to get his hitting to become a consistent hitter like we thought he was last year, and he will continue to be. I think the move for Vladdy to have a guy like Travis Shaw at third who can play a lot of positions. Travis Shaw was a phenomenal signing for the Blue Jays because not only can he hit the ball well, he can play numerous positions. To have Austin Martin coming through the system, which was a phenomenal situation for the Blue Jays to play out at the draft, to go from 2 to 5. I mean, thank you, Baltimore, for not selecting him second overall. Oh, my God, I love that pick. But I think this is a move that benefits the Jays long term. And it sounds crazy, but if you can have Vladimir Guerrero become like a 290, 300 hitter, hitting 35, 40 home runs a year, 110 RBIs, I mean, that's only going to translate to wins in the standings for the Blue Jays, because we all believe Bo Bichette's going to be a really good player long-term for the Jays. We all believe that Kevin Biggio is going to be an important piece. We all think Nate Pearson's coming through the ranks and is going to be one of the better pitchers in the American League for the Blue Jays. Ken Giles, I hope, is here long-term. I think he's a phenomenal closer.
I do too.
There's a lot of pieces to like. I think the future success of the organization revolves around how good Vladimir Guerrero can become, how good of a hitter he can become, how good of a leader he is in the locker room. If he can hit well and play first base at a high level, I think the Jays are only going to benefit from that, and they're going to be a World Series contender sooner than we think if this kid can develop into that type of player. I don't know what you thought of the move of Vladdy to first base and DH, but I personally, mentally, for his sake, like it.
I love it, honestly. I don't like. We went to a Jays game last year, and Vladdy was playing third base, and it's not like I watched the game and I was like, he can't play third base, but it's just like at the same time, he's not the most agile of guys, and it is called the hot corner for a reason because
he's got a big butt and he cannot lie.
Yeah, he's got a big booty, but he has a hard time moving from side to side. He's got a good glove. He's got a good arm. He can get the ball over to first, no problem. I just feel like, he's also not a tall guy, like he's not a very tall guy. So he's not the same build as his dad. And I don't really feel like that translates well as a third baseman. I just really don't. I think he will have a lot more success at first base /DH. Him and Rowdy Tellez can kind of, go between the DH spot. Depends on, who you want to have a day off.
And they can flip-flop back and forth. Rowdy can hit for a lot of power, too.
Yeah, that's the
They can play first base. Like, they looked at him like they got rid of Justin Smoke for Rowdy to take the next step.
Yeah.
So you got to hope that those two can flip-flop and, kind of one day one plays first base, one day the other guy plays first base, and they kind of rotate between those two positions, like you said. I think that is probably going to be the plan.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what they're able to do with him at first, because that does open up a lot more possibilities. Like you said, Shaw will probably slide into third base. You have Bichette at short. You have Biggio at second. Your left fielder might be Gurriel. It might be Teoscar. Your center fielder is Grichuk. Right field, I don't really know who you put in right field. That's kind of more of like is there really a defined number one right fielder?
I'm assuming it's going to be Teoscar in right field or Teoscar. You know what? Actually, come to think of it, Teoscar actually might be center field. Grichuk might be the right fielder, and maybe Gurriel's the left fielder. I don't know how they're going to play that one out. That one's one that's kind of up in the air, but I would think Gurriel, because he had a lot of success last year once he made that transition to left field, because it was not a pretty start in the infield for him. There's a lot of errors, I think. Yeah. But, like, Gurriel's kind of what I'm basing Vladdy off, too. Like, you saw Gurriel. He was struggling in the infield, and it wasn't translating to any part of his game. Like, he wasn't hitting the ball well. He was struggling on defense, and he just looked mentally drained. Then when they sent him down for that Buffalo stint, got him to focus on his game, transition to an outfielder, he came back up, and he might have been their best player for a long period of time. Yeah. Like, he really started hitting the ball well and translated that to his left field. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm basing Vladdy off is that situation. Like, if Vladdy can go to first base and play well like Gurriel did and make that transition, it could be scary for a lot of pitchers on that mound. Garrett Cole, watch out.
Speaking of Garrett Cole, I do, with this shortened season coming up and the Jays playing the Yankees a lot, obviously, and the Red Sox and the Orioles and the Rays, I think the Jays have a...
watch out, too. Both of you, watch it. The North is coming. Sorry, go ahead.
Blake Snell, you too.
Tanner Roark is ours.
But no, honestly, I think the Jays have a legitimate shot at making the playoffs this year. It's a 60-game shortened season. You never know what happens. I
picked them to be a wild card team in a 60-game season. I did, because I think Tampa might struggle out of the gate, possibly. I mean, Tampa's got a really good team. They're like the Jays. They got a lot of good young players. I feel like they're a little ahead of the Jays. But with Ryu coming into the AL East and to pitch for the Blue Jays, I think if those young players take that next step, I did pick the Blue Jays to be a wild card team. I think Boston takes a step back with the loss of Mookie Betts and David 100%. Bryce in their rotation. I think they take a step back. I don't think they're a bad team, but I don't think they're a great one either. No. And I feel like a slow start could, like, you get off to, like I said to Troy last episode, you get off to like a 15-26 start, you're done. Like, that's it. Like, there's no recovering from that. It's not like the Nationals start last year will not happen this season. If you start like the Nationals did last season, you will not regroup. You're done. Like, that's it. I have the Blue Jays and the White Sox actually as two wildcard teams. Oh, wow. Because the White Sox got Keuchel and Encarnacion. The Jays got Ryu, Travis Shaw. Like, they got a lot of good young players that can already hit the ball really well. The Jays and White Sox were two teams that I mentioned in a shortened season that could really benefit and make a playoff run. I think they're wildcard teams, both of them, because I had the Twins and the Yankees winning those two divisions.
Now, I haven't really looked into too many specifics about the MLB season, but do you know if there's a trade deadline?
August 31st.
It's August 31st. Okay. So even still, if the Jays are in contention at that point, you never know. They might add somebody else to that. That's the other thing too, is like, how does that because with coronavirus going on and everything, it's like, does that person have to isolate for, a certain amount of time? Like, are they able to integrate right directly into it? I know everyone's in their own kind of bubble kind of areas. So
I don't know, but there is a trade deadline. So if teams are in contention, they can make moves. The problem would be, like, do you want to make moves and trade a lot of your young prospects for the sake of a few games? But I mean, if it brings you a World Series championship, I guess you would.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. If the Jays are in contention, it'd be nice to see them try and make.
I think the problem with the trade deadline this season, I know there is one, and I know that there is a 60-game season, and they're hoping to be done by that second wave we're all talking about. But, like, the problem with the trade deadline that I have is, what if that second wave comes mid-September? Like, you've made a trade. Like, say you go out, say the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Phillies or whoever is in contention in the middle of the season, the Cardinals. Say one of those teams goes out and trades for, I'll say, Francisco Lindor.
Okay.
And Francisco Lindor, I believe, has just this year left on his contract. He might have one more. I'd have to look into it. But then the rest of the season's canceled. There's no World Series. Like, you're done. Well, now you just traded your first and third best prospects to get 10 games out of Francisco Lindor in hopes to win a World Series. And then the season was kind of wiped. And now this guy's a free agent at the end of the year. Like, now what happens? Like, that's my only concern about the trade deadline this year is are teams willing to go all in on this season when there's so much uncertainty with what's going to happen in the future.
Maybe
that's the big thing.
Maybe the MLB or teams specifically might implement something if the season doesn't finish out. Like, you might be able to recoup assets, or you might be.
I just don't think they like putting so many conditions on a trade.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like we acquire, I don't know. Like say we acquire JD Martinez from the Red Sox. Here's our first prospect. I'm just throwing JD Martinez. I'm just thinking of names off the top of my head. Like we acquire JD Martinez from the Red Sox for like their first and second ranked prospects or whatever. But we'll give you these prospects on the condition that we have the opportunity to compete for the World Series this year.
Yeah.
Now, JD Martinez is a little more controllable. I can't think of anyone with an expiring contract off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I know.
We acquire this guy for their top prospect on the condition we'll give you this top prospect that the season finishes and that we had the opportunity to at least compete for the championship.
Yeah.
And if the season is wiped, then, we reverse the trade kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like to me that kind of makes sense to do. But back to my original point there, it's just like, the Jays really do have an opportunity here to really show the MLB that
we're coming.
We're coming. The North
we're here.
Like we are the kings of the North. We are the North. Like I don't like saying that because it's a Raptors thing, and I'm not a Raptors fan. But the Jays are a legit contender this year for the playoffs at least. I don't know necessarily about a World Series, but definitely the playoffs. I think Vladdy Guerrero is going to take another step. I think Kevin Biggio is going to take another step. I really like Kevin Biggio. I think he's a good hitter. I think he's a good defender. He's obviously
second baseman.
Yeah, I think he's like
possibly outfielder long term. You never know. Like he's another guy like Travis Shaw that could move around the diamond and play a lot of positions. Very versatile.
I think that's very key with upcoming baseball prospects and like young baseball players in general. Is like it's good to be versatile. Like back in the day, it was like you're a third baseman, you're nothing else. If you get bad,
David Ortiz was strictly a designated hitter.
You'll be a DH. Like that's what happens. Like if you can't do your job anymore, you become DH. It's just like you should be able to play multiple positions. So that way, if one guy gets injured, they can plug and play you there and throw somebody else there who's more comfortable at position.
And I think that's the hope with Austin Martin long term. Like he can play the infield, and I've read that he can also be a pretty solid outfielder as well. Yeah. Like that might be the plan long term with him. If the infield's crowded and there's they can't make a decision like if Bo's going to shift to third or second, or if Cavan's going to go to the outfield, or what the case may be. Maybe Austin Martin's that guy that goes to the outfield. And I feel like that is important. I feel like you're going to see that. We talked about hockey players potentially being, there's a lot of more skilled hockey players today, and a lot of guys can do different things. I feel like that's coming with baseball as well. There's a lot of guys that can play numerous positions. A lot of guys that you can maneuver around the diamond. Like you said, I feel like that's key for a championship team. Like if your left fielder goes down, can your second baseman go play left field for a couple of games while the other guy rehabs, and you have another guy that can play second to fill in?
Yeah.
I feel like the Jays are going to have a lot of that long term, and guys like Travis Shaw, Kevin Biggio, Austin Martin. I know Travis Shaw is not locked up long term, but that's super important for a baseball player, and I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. It's something that I think the Jays, like you said, like they have a lot of versatility throughout the roster. So it's just one of those things like that adds to my excitement for this upcoming 60-game season. And it adds to my belief that the Jays really have an opportunity here to vie for a playoff spot.